Hey, American Express card members, you don't want to miss this. Now through December 31st, there's a big reason for you to shop small at local stores in your neighborhood. Learn more and enroll your eligible card today at americanexpress.com/shop small offer. Terms apply.
This is Larry Culpepper. I love college football so much that I went ahead and came up with the idea of the playoff for it. And the only way I can get ready for each and every Saturday of college football is by listening to the Championship Drive podcast.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
We heard Stan Van Gundy with some very passionate views about what happened in the election the other night, and certainly everyone is sharing their opinions, and everyone is entitled to their opinions. But the one thing that I thought was most interesting in what he said was he said that he came into work in the morning yesterday, and he could just tell a different attitude, that a lot of his players were really upset by what had happened, and he chose to address that with them and whatnot. And I'm curious to know, I've never been a part of anything like this, of course, and you guys have. So I can certainly imagine on a high school level, I'm guessing that in every high school athletic team everywhere yesterday, I would hope, the coach sat down and talked with his players or her players about whatever their emotions may be, even on the college level, because those are places for spiritual and emotional and intellectual, awakening. On the pro level, these are, for example, Stan Van Gundy. Would you have expected, Mark Schlereth, I'll give you the chance to comment here, if something like this had happened while you were playing, do you think that the coaches would have taken some time out to say, hey, let's talk about this? Yeah. If this is something that's on everybody's mind, if this is something that has everyone in a different place mentally than they would normally be, is this something that we as a group should sit down and talk about?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I would expect the head coach to come up and create a meeting in the morning meeting and say, hey, guys, you know what, let's hash this out for a few minutes. And very much like Mike said earlier, a lot of it is, while we're here, we need to be focused on what we need to be focused on, but you can use this as a catalyst to change. One of the things they always say in a locker room is, let's not talk politics, let's not talk money, let's not talk religion. That's one of the things they always talk about in a locker room environment. But you have to talk about it to some degree, and you have to address it. And, one of the things that always I was blessed. I played for a bunch of great offensive line coaches, Hall of Fame type of guys, with Joe Bugle and Jim Hanifin and Alex Gibbs during my course of time. In the National Football League, I played for a guy by the name of Dan Cazzetto in college, who's a great offensive line coach. So I was coached exceptionally well during the course of my career. But one of the things, and I always speak about this when I'm doing corporate level speaking and things, that made us great in Denver was the way we were bonded. 5 guys becoming one, thinking, together to what's the best for us as an organization. And you take 5 guys like Zimmerman from Oregon and Brian Habib from Ellensburg, Washington, and me from Alaska, and Tommy Nalen from Foxborough, Massachusetts. You talk about guys from different parts of the country, Tony Jones, down from the South. I mean, there's a group of guys here that you have to basically become united to play well together. And we would shut down meetings every single Friday afternoon, about a half an hour before we would normally shut down a meeting. And Alex Gibbs, our offensive line coach, would put a topic on the grease board and say, let's discuss it so that we can understand each other's points of view.
What kind of topic? Like a social topic?
Anything. Hey, your daughter comes home, she's 16 and she's pregnant. Boom. What do we do?
Really?
What do we talk about? Absolutely. Shut down football. And we got to know one another. And we got to lean on one another. And we got to understand where each other came from. And whether you're white like me, fish belly white from Anchorage, Alaska, whether you're Tony Jones, I love him. He's my brother. And you know what? It became one of those things where we would unite and we would come together and we would accept each other's differences because we are beautifully and wonderfully created differently. That's what makes us strong in this country. That's what's the beauty of this country is we're woven together and we're completely different. But our differences are a strength. And until we embrace those things as a country, we're going to continue to have the same issues that we have now. Black, white, yellow, doesn't matter. We are wonderfully created different And that's what makes us so dang strong. And I wish we would just embrace it. So we would talk about those social issues in our meetings every Friday. And I guarantee you, it's one of the things that made us a great unit because individually, none of us were all that good. Gary Zimmerman is a Hall of Famer, but he was at the end of his career. Tommy Nalen should be a Hall of Famer. But you know what? I was a guy. Habib, I love you, Brian. You were a guy. You know, we know what we were. But together we were great. And because we embraced that.
It's interesting. You know, we never did anything like that. I mean, I'd say that's way more a rarity, the exception than the rule of what goes on in meeting rooms. Not to say that social issues aren't discussed, but you also have to look at the sport. Look where we are. All right, we're in the beginning of the basketball season of 82 games, so maybe it's discussed a little more, you know, around games. Look where we are in the NFL. The NFL, you play one game a week, and yesterday was Wednesday, the first day of preparation.
Install.
So there's a real difference in how a coach may handle it for an NFL team that says, guys, I get it, but you know what? We're in the second half of the season here, and we got a game coming up, so we can discuss this. You can discuss this on your time, but we have a game to get ready for. Look at other situations. I just pulled one up just to pull it up. June 17th, 1994. What was that? That was the O.J. chase.
Yeah.
Now, football's not going on. Basketball, you know, you're past the championship, so it's baseball.
It was during the finals.
I'm sorry, it was during the finals.
The Knicks and Rockets were playing that night. Your point is correct, yes.
But baseball, you were in that season. So how do you deal with it for different sports? If you're in June of a baseball season, you know, as opposed to, as I'm talking about here, Wednesday in this about the second half of an NFL season on an install day to the seventh game of an NBA season. Right. So that's a factor as well on where you are in your particular season from our side. I was in the locker room when O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. We all sat around and watched it, and there was shock. There was, there was some excitement. It was kind of a crazy time in our country to watch that whole thing unfold like it did, especially because it brought it back to the sports world, and we addressed it as a team. Hey, guys, this is where we are. This is what happened. You know what? Let's hunker down, focus in on what we need to do, and let's move forward. Some things are you just know they need to be talked about, at least acknowledged and talked about it, and then again, depending on where you are in your sports season, to move on to the task at hand.
Well, if you believe the words you are about to hear, then it is pretty clear they did not discuss this in the Alabama locker room yesterday. Here was Nick Saban when being asked about the election. You can make up your own mind if you think he's telling you the truth.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't even know yesterday was Election Day. So it was so important to me that I didn't even know it was happening. We're focused on other things here. I don't really make political comments. So if I say I like one person, that means that everybody that voted for the other person doesn't like me. So why would I do that? I want what's best for our country. I'm not sure I can figure that out. I want what's best for, people who want to improve the quality of their life. And I hope whoever our leader is will certainly do all that he can do to make our country safe and improve the quality of life of a lot of the people, that we have in our country. And I don't think I'm qualified to determine, who that should be.
The last part of that statement, I completely understand. The first part, I don't believe that. There's no way I believe he didn't know it was Election Day. I mean, I find that hard to believe. If he didn't, oh my gosh, that's really hold up.
You know what I find harder to believe than that he didn't know it was Election Day? That he cares if the other side doesn't like him. Nobody likes you, Nick. I don't think anybody likes you.
Well, I have actually given that some thought. There have been during the election. I had on my list of things to get to almost every day for like 2 weeks. Mike Leach, among people, was a Trump supporter. He came out very vocally supporting Donald Trump, and there were others who came out supporting Hillary Clinton and whatever it is. And I was going to ask at one point on the show, do you think that is dangerous for coaches? Do you think that making that kind of whichever way you go, do you run the risk then of alienating recruits, which are the lifeblood of this? And I think there's Nick Saban basically saying it doesn't do me any good to be taking one side or the other. I agree with you. I find it hard to believe believe. Yeah. And there was something about the way he said that I didn't love. That's how important it was to me. I didn't even know that it was Election Day. We had other things we're doing here, which is suggesting that the installation of his defense is more important than who the president of the United States is. I know that's not what he means. There was something in sort of the way that he said that I could have done without. But, coaches do live like in their own hermetically little sealed bubbles. I find it hard to believe he didn't know it was Election Day.
I do as well. I think that might be a little far-fetched there.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Let's do true false here and get through as many as we can looking ahead to the NFL week. Golic, I shall start with you.
Okay.
True or false, Tony Romo will take more snaps from center than Jared Goff will this season?
I think that's false. I think at some point you'll see Goff. At some point the Rams will be woefully out of it as opposed to now just about out of it. And I do think toward the end of the season you will see some Jared Goff take some snaps. And outside of Dak Prescott getting hurt, you're not going to see Tony Romo.
Stink.
I think it's false as well. I don't think Tony Romo's playing. I think it'll be nice, but it's a great story. But Dak Prescott playing too well, and eventually, I know they're not going to be an 8-8 team because they told us they weren't going to be an 8-8 team in Hard Knocks. They're probably going to be more like a 7-9, 6-10 team. So eventually, Golf will be the quarterback.
Next, Stink. True or false? 3 teams from the NFC East will make the playoffs.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to say why not? Let's go true. Right? You get your division winners and then your 2 wild card teams from the NFC East. Yeah, why not? I think right now they're so close. They're nip and tuck. Obviously, the Giants playing okay. The Redskins playing okay. The Cowboys playing great right now. So, yeah, why not 3 teams from there?
Yeah, right now that's exactly what it is with the Giants and the Redskins being those wild card teams.
The Eagles have 3 divisional losses, right? Haven't they lost to all 3 divisional rivals?
In their division.
Yeah, that hurts badly.
Everybody else is 2-1, but Dallas leading, and right now, as I said, it's the Giants and Redskins. I'll say true as well. I like that. Why not? Let's see it happen.
All right, let's stick with the theme. Golic, true or false? 3 teams from the AFC West will make the playoffs.
Wow. Man, that's another great one. You know what? I think I'm going to say true on that as well. I love that division right now. I love a tweet I got from someone that says, "Make Stink say something nice about the Raiders." But I'm going to say true to that one as well.
He's not crazy about the Chiefs either, Stink.
No, listen. Hey, I think it's true. I mean, the Raiders are playing really good football. They lined up in heavy against the Broncos and bludgeoned them for 218 yards rushing. Big physical offensive line. All right, I don't want to gush too much here because people in Denver will get mad at me. But, yeah, they're playing really good football. I'm going to go true on that.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is that your daughter Avery got in Travis Kelce's head, but he's throwing flags at refs and things like that. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give him a call. Good tongue lashing there.
Next, Stink. With more states legalizing marijuana, the NFL should take it off its banned list of substances. True or false?
That's true. I think it's true. I think, you know what, I think it's a farce anyhow. You test for it one time, you tell them when the test is, and then if you pass the test, it's an idiot test, as we say all the time. You could take it off the ban list and not tell anybody. You can not tell anybody.
Suspended for it, though, is the thing.
Well, they do. And quite honestly, with all the issues that the league has, maybe they just need to let go of this one, and just say we're not going to test for it anymore.
Quit testing for it and don't tell anybody. Don't tell your players. Don't tell your organization. Just quit.
I think by the next CBA, I think it will be out. I think at that point, going through the whole CBA, it won't be tested for.
I have been saying for weeks on this issue, there's no reason you have to take it off the banned list. Just stop testing for it.
Right.
And then, if a player walks in and says, hey, I'm using marijuana, you can suspend him.
Or gets popped, driving, speeding, and all of a sudden they have marijuana on him and, the whole deal.
But you don't have to be testing for it. One more quickly. True or false, Golic? Zeke Elliott at some point is going to hit a rookie wall.
I'll say false because I think they have other ways to go. Jason Witten has been a monster for them. Des Bryant back, that O-line helping to pave the way, and Dak Prescott running the ball as well and making plays. So too much of a load isn't on Zeke Elliott. Yep. They bring in Alfred Morris as well. I thought that was an excellent pickup. I said it when it happened. So, no, I think they can protect him enough to where he won't hit that wall.
I'm with you. I'm going false. I think one thing right now is just the way they run the ball. They're so multiple in the way they run the ball. They run a lot of heavy formations, double tight end formations, fullback formations, and they do. I mean, they run outside, they run inside. They run read zone stuff. There's a lot of variety there. I don't think he'll hit that wall.
When your business is construction and you get a big job that has to be done in record time, you need to get the ball rolling. which means all of a sudden you're looking to buy enough sheetrock and lumber, steel, and other materials quickly. Business cards from American Express Open can give you buying power to help cover the big purchases you need to make when you need to make them. Find out how American Express cards and services can help prepare you for growth at open.com.
But here he is now. This is, we hope he feels, his home away from home. Booger McFarland is here to talk sports with us for the hour. Good morning, Booger.
Always enjoy being with you guys. You know, normally me and Golic kind of exchange texts over the weekend.
Right.
You know, just to kind of get the process started. So it's always good to be in contact with you, Greeny.
Booger texted me after I made the mistake that we talked about this week when Danny Cannell throws his line in the water.
Don't bite.
And trolls for that, and I was the big fish on the hook. Yeah, Booger texts me and says, "Dude, you can't do it. You can't bite on that." I'm like, I did. I was a hungry fish searching it out.
That's what I picture, Danny. I'm not a fisherman, but I can see him going, "Oh, I got a big one.
Yeah,
I got a big one. It's Golic this time." Okay, so Booger is here very quickly because I promised it, and we'll all get a smile on our face. I gave this unsolicited advice to Blake Griffin, who's going back to play in Oklahoma City tomorrow night, where he went to college, where he grew up, and people will speculate like crazy about his future. And I said he should say what Jim Harbaugh always says: I only talk about the job I have done. Mm-hmm. And that way there's no room for misinterpretation. There's no room for parsing his words or anything. And because I referenced Harbaugh, I thought we could all just put a smile on our face. Jim Harbaugh, because he is Jim Harbaugh, was talking about his favorite character, and that character is SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob. Okay, SpongeBob. I love his attitude. He's got the he attacks each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. I mean, try to model my behavior. I mean, we all should. I mean, what a great employee he is. I mean, he is a go-getter. He's always got a bounce in the step. He's always he's got pizzazz. He puts his heart and soul into making those Krabby Patties. I think he's awesome.
I mean, listen, how are we even shocked anymore? Now, I'm a fan of the show. I'm a fan of, Patrick Starr and Mr. Krabs and all that. And who are some of the other ones? Squidward tentacles and all that. I like the show.
Was that show even on when you were a kid?
No.
Right.
When my kids were kids.
Golic was a kid. I Love Lucy was on. Golic is he's very old.
My kids left the room and I stayed in.
Yeah, watched that one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sandy cheeks, and
Yeah, my kids liked SpongeBob also, and I liked it too. I went through I watched all my kids' favorite shows with them. They were never as into SpongeBob. Like, right. I was much more familiar with things like Hannah Montana, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
The Wiggles.
That's So Brave. Well, the Wiggles is when they were really small.
Really little, yeah.
And all of that. So anyway, I just thought we'd all enjoy hearing a little bit from Jim Harbaugh. Back to reality. We were talking earlier this morning. Mark Schlereth was in the chair you're sitting in now, Booger, and we were talking about whether coaches on a day like yesterday would gather their players together and let everyone kind of talk openly about their feelings. We've heard Stan Van Gundy and Steve Kerr and many others being very open about the way they feel about the outcome of the election the other night. And you tweeted a response to our conversation while it was going on. Even better. Now you're sitting here. What were your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are really simple, especially when you look at the NBA, you look at NFL, and you look at Major League Baseball. Those are three leagues that are comprised largely of African Americans and minorities. And when you talk about human people and just human characteristics and human personalities, and I think some of the things that were said during the election process were offensive to African Americans and offensive to minorities and offensive to women. And I think when you walk in that room yesterday, whatever coach you are, whatever league you're in, if you're in one of those leagues and your team is there, you have to address the elephant in the room. Everyone knows what the elephant in the room is. And the job of a coach or a president or a CEO is to understand the pulse of their team, their organization, understand what's going on. You always hear Herm Edwards talk about, I didn't coach from upstairs, I coached in the locker room. So you have to go in the locker room and understand what your players are discussing, understand what your players are talking about, because ultimately that's going to translate and relate to what goes on the field. So I think the coach has to address it, because there are always going to be different views in that locker room, especially when you have whites, blacks, people that come from different backgrounds, and you don't want that to affect your job, your profession. So what do? You address the elephant in the room. You say, guys, you know what? it really doesn't matter who won. We can't control that. As long as you voted and did your job, that's all you can do. Let's not let the opinion that we all get to have affect how we work. Regardless of whether I disagree with Golic or I disagree with Greeny, whatever I disagree with, we still have to come together and do our job. But you have to address it. And you heard Steve Kerr talk about it because those are real-life issues. When you walk in there and your star players are down, they have their head down, or Steph Curry's not himself, or somebody in the NFL is not themselves, coaches understand the pulse. They know what's going on. So you got to address it because you don't want that to linger throughout the week. And in a very divisive time like this, in a divisive election, you have to make sure that you understand the pulse. And you saw the protests last night. You saw everything that's going on. This country is divided more than ever now. It's divided. And sports are just a microcosm of what goes on outside. That's why I always think it's very funny when, the company we work for are different places. Stay away from religion, stay away from politics. Well, you're saying stay away from life because it's the life we live every day. And if you think that you can wake up yesterday and life goes on as normal, you're mistaken. I don't care who you are. And so I think the coaches have to address it and they have to get a pulse of their team, of their business, of their organization, because if you're not, you're doing that team or business a disservice.
I agree it has to be brought up, but the reality of the situation, especially in football, because what day is after Election Day? Install day.
Wednesday.
So they're
long day.
They're going to bring it up, but they're also going to say, but let's not affect our workplace.
Yep.
Okay, this happened. We all have to deal with it. And you can deal with it, when you guys are together in a locker room. But when, as I said earlier, when you're in the meeting room, when you're doing walkthrough, when you're in the weight room, when you're on the practice field, we got to get ready to do our
Where's
job.
your focus at?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a time to do your job, but then I think, Booger, what you're saying is that you also have to set aside time to deal with
can't act
the
like
issues.
It didn't happen.
Right.
Well, and so that brings me to the person who acted like it didn't happen. So now we go to a college campus, and you have Nick Saban, at least publicly, saying he didn't even know it had been Election Day. Now, neither Mike nor I believe that. You're laughing. I don't know.
I don't believe it either. But it goes.
But would that suggest that he did not bring this up with his players? Right? I mean, a college is a place, as I've said many times on this program, for spiritual awakening and an understanding of the world that you live in and all sorts of other things that all of us who weren't football players in college got the opportunity to do on college campuses. And whether it's, standing up for things you believe in or whatever it is, that's part of the college experience. These guys are football players, and I get that, and they have a quote-unquote job to do, even if they are student athletes.
Yeah, don't go there.
Let me not go there. The point is, does this suggest to you think that Saban did not bring this up with his players? He just walked in on Wednesday and said, all right, guys, let's get to work.
Absolutely, because here's the difference between professional sports and amateur sports, and I use the quotation marks amateur sports, is that in amateur sports I can dictate and tell you what to do because the authority belongs to me, the head coach. All right? We're not going to discuss it. You don't have a say-so. Your job is to go to school, get an education. Professional sports, you and I have kids going to the same school. You and I have mortgages with the same company. We go to the same bank. So we're more equals, and in some cases, the NFL player or the professional athlete is a step above the coach because they're making more money. Okay, when you're on the collegiate level, Nick Saban's making $7-8 million a year. These kids are whatever they're getting from their scholarship, so he's dictating to them. His job is to teach and make sure that they get an education and become the best football players they can be. So I have no doubt he did not bring it up. Now, when it was brought up was when those players talked to their parents. When those players were in the locker room talking to each other. People talk. This is a society where everyone is going to talk. And if you're a coach, if you're Nick Saban, if it ever gets to the point where you hear it in the locker room, you have to address it. And maybe he did. However, I don't think he did. But I also think that Nick Saban knew it was Election Day. But, you'd have to be under a rock not to know it was Election Day.
But also we keep hearing how coaches want to keep saying they're teachers, and some of us kind of, some may be, but scoff at that. Wouldn't this be one of the best teaching moments? You know what all the players on that team can do? Vote.
Yeah.
They can vote. I mean, wouldn't because I agree in the pro ranks you're on even level. You're all dealing with mortgages and and all that. But not in college. You got a guy making $8 million. You got 18 to 22-year-olds who can vote. I mean, almost you look at it and it's early in the week.
Yeah.
On a Tuesday, and even talk about a Monday before you vote on Tuesday, about kind of an opportunity to teach instead of just basically ignoring the entire situation. I don't know. To me, if you want to say you're a coach and you're a teacher, that to me is almost one of the most teachable moments out there, is discussing something like that.
I would have loved to have been a reporter and asked the kids, did they vote? Because that's something that everyone who's registered has the right to do. So to me, that would have been a more apropos question. Hey, did you guys vote? You don't have to tell me your affiliation or who you voted for. But if Saban is saying that, well, my kids aren't allowed to vote, then there's an entirely different issue.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure he didn't.
I'm sure he's not saying.
You're dealing with absentee votes for kids that from different.
Many of them come from different states.
Correct.
Exactly right. So it's not as easy as walking out. Yeah.
You would think for the overwhelming majority also of college athletes, this would have been the first presidential election in which they could vote. I guess some of them could be 22.
But for the most part, you're right.
For the most part, it's going to be their first election, and that's an important thing. I remember mine. I'm sure you guys remember yours. I mean, it's an important thing. I know that we sat at the dinner table at my house last night. My kids are 16 and 13, and we talked for probably the longest conversation we have had as a family in a long time. Was my family last night just sitting and talking about this. One other thing I want to ask you guys about, Mike, because we sometimes, and look, I'm only observing this from the outside, but I feel like my observation, and we heard Mark Schlereth talking with great passion, and I thought beautifully about it this morning, was that inside a locker room is a place where there really is, for the most part, equality, where guys will just sit together and they'll hold hands and raise a hand together, and all of the differences that we sometimes, that were clearly at being discussed so much during this election, are put aside or, in fact, celebrated. Mark said it a lot better than I'm saying it. So everyone respects everyone's right to their opinion.
Yes.
Now, what happens if someone takes that opinion and instead of just stating it, puts it in an incendiary way? I'm reading the story. Did you guys see what Jake Arrieta tweeted?
No.
So Jake Arrieta, superstar pitcher of the Chicago Cubs. Right. Now, their season has just ended. They won't all be together again now until spring training. But Jake Arrieta, I just lost it. Here it is. Jake Arrieta tweeted, "Time for Hollywood to pony up and head for the border. Hashtag I'll help you pack. Hashtag beat it." All right, that's Jake Arrieta tweeting. It's got 22,000 retweets and 43.7 thousand likes. That's something that it's an incendiary way of putting it. It is one thing to say, hey, I'm disappointed with the results, or I'm happy with the results. I support the new president. I don't support, whatever the case is.
Right.
It's another thing entirely to put it in the terms in which he put it. Is that something that you would imagine? Now, again, his team isn't coming back together again for a long time, but is that something that you think will have to be addressed by others if this was a football player in the locker room?
Well, if you did it in the locker room, if it was, because you're right.
That's Twitter. That's everywhere.
The big thing there is he's not going in a clubhouse for a long time.
Right, February.
So put this in an NBA context or an NFL context, if somebody did something, that was an incendiary type of a tweet. Yeah, especially – the big thing would be if people in the same locker room vehemently disagree with it. That's where you get – if everybody's, giving them a harumph and agreeing and saying, you're right, okay, you got no issues. It's when you have other views that say, well, wait a minute. You said that, and, boy, the way you said it, I disagree with you. And that – so, I mean, that – but these guys are – remember, we're adults, so you're supposed to be able to handle it as adults. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But, yes, especially if there is a other side of the view – It's got to be talked about.
Here's the one thing I'll say. Set politics to the side, policy and NAFTA and all these different things.
Yeah.
Set all those things to the side. This country is a country about equality, and it's about fairness and about how you treat people. And where I have a disconnect is when if you get inside the locker room and we're just talking about how you treat people, whether they're males, they're females, how you appreciate them, how you talk to them, how you lift them up. We get on all these networks and we talk about bullying, we talk about domestic violence, we talk about all these different things. Those are issues in life. And some of the issues that were in this election were issues in life. And I don't care, whatever politics you want to believe in, go ahead.
Right.
My biggest issue, and I think the biggest issue among people in general, is about how you treat people, how you talk to people, how you look at people. Because at the end of the day, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or third party, we're all people, and we all deserve to be treated like Americans. And I think when you look at some of the feelings inside the locker room, I wouldn't care what politics you believe in, but I would care what people characteristics you believe in, what personalities you believe in, how you believe that my daughter and your daughter should be treated. And I think that goes beyond politics. That's the American way of life, people. Like, that has nothing to do with politics. How you respect and treat people, that ain't politics. And for people that want to say, well, that's part of politics, baloney. That's not. That's just the American way of life. When you live in this country, you deserve to be treated a certain way.
No, listen, I agree with that. Now, there are certainly other factors that come into play.
Exactly.
On how your life is and how it's going with the current administration. And do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you want to change? Do you not want to change?
But those are the politics of it, though.
Exactly right.
Right.
To your point, completely agree. Treat others like you want to be treated.
Exactly.
Isn't that the golden rule that we always have? And certainly that's what we like to respect in a locker room where you and I spent most of our lives is we may differ in views, but, let's be alike in how we want to treat people and treat other people. And as I said, there isn't a locker room that's ever been where everybody's gotten along. There's always some people that don't get along. They just don't see eye to eye on things. That's normal. That's the way it goes. Just like here in a break room here at ESPN, you get 10 people in there. Not everybody's going to agree on everything. It's the same way in locker rooms.
Of course. I guess what I'm saying is it is obviously one thing for people to have you and I can sit here. We can have voted for a different candidate. We can have a different view, whether we're happy or disappointed with the result of the election. It's another thing, for lack of a better word, like when the Jets lose, a lot of people like to rub my face in it, right? People will tweet me like, the Jets stink. And look, it's just a football game. Right. It's nothing. Yeah. Something like this, obviously, is something that is much more personal and much more emotional for a lot of people.
People take it personal.
Yeah.
That's the biggest key within
Of course, this is something you take personal.
Right.
This is not a football game that I didn't participate in. Right. At the end of the day, I root for the Jets, but whether they won or lost, it doesn't impact my life on any concrete level. This stuff does. This stuff does matter. This stuff has cut to the core of a lot of people's feelings about living in this country and whatever it is. So regardless of which, I have total respect for everyone, regardless of whom you voted for and whatever you may feel. But I think when you start going to the place where you start now rubbing people, your candidate would get out of that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, it's those people that said, I'm going to leave if he's voted in, and now you're saying, okay, you got voted, go ahead and leave.
Right. I get it. I understand. The discussion has been incendiary on all sides for a long time, and there isn't any question that we all need to take a step back now this thing is over and take a look at ourselves and take a look at how we conduct ourselves through issues, through elections and other significant times. I guess my point is, if you're a player in a locker room and one of the players tweeted that, is that a complication? Is that all of a sudden something that has to be, to use your term, Booger, to get the eleif in the room addressed?
You're men in that room.
Or is it possibly going to bubble over?
No, you're men in that room. So if we're in the same locker room and you said something that I vehemently disagree with and I want to bring it up, listen, we're adults. You're going to come in the locker room and we would talk about it.
I cannot believe his name just Riley Cooper is another example that I'm thinking of where something like that happened, right? Riley Cooper and in the locker room, and that was something you couldn't just say, well,
Coach is going to address it.
It has to be addressed.
Coach have to address it. Yeah.
Coach will probably come in and say, guys, everybody come in and close the door. And he'll say it because everybody knows what happened. But what you have to do is get it out there, and everybody can take a deep breath. Now let's discuss it. And so to your point, Greeny, that tweet, if the Cubs were in season, knowing Joe Madden the way I do, Joe Madden likes to keep things light. He's open. He'll probably come in. If he doesn't have a conversation with Jake himself, he may get in front of the team, hey, guys, this is a divisive time. Let's make sure we respect each other. Right. He may even say that. But in no way, shape, or form can you ignore that, because the thing a coach doesn't want to do, or a president or a CEO, you cannot allow the temperature in your room or your business to get into the playing field or the workplace in a negative manner.
All right, Mike and Mike, Booger McFarland is here. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Dan Le Batard will join us from Miami in just a little bit on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Dwayne Wade will play in Miami as a visitor tonight for the first time, which I'm sure will be a bit of a shock for all of the fans there. We'll get Dan's thoughts on that. We got lots of college football to get to with Booger in our studio. And with that thought in mind, once again, Golic, it is time for our winning word of the day. Now, we want the word to be simple. Our friends at AutoZone have allowed us to bring a winner a day every single day. We've had 8 winners so far. And by the way, 4 of them men, 4 of them women. We're thrilled to be bringing everybody with a guest with us to Tampa Bay for the College Football Championship. Maybe we'll see Booger down there.
I'll be there, yes.
Put a little golf down there.
That's already set up.
That's a lock. And we're all looking forward to that.
He's the one setting it all up.
And so all you need to do is know the winning word of the day and then enter it the 2 ways Golic is going to give you. Now, Brooksy, our producer, is an idiot And as a consequence, we told him, don't make the word confusing. And he's gotten kind of full of himself because we've done very well with this contest. The entries numbers are up and all that. So now he's just trying to get cute with us. And so today's word is confusing.
Yes, it is.
I don't mean that figuratively. I mean it literally. The word of the day is confusing. CONFUSING. Please do not hold Brooksy's idiocy against us by not entering this word, despite its stupidity.
Oh, my God.
The word is confusing.
Yes.
And here are the two ways to enter it.
Yeah. This really, the fun we're having is cool, but this is the important part. If you enter it any other way than these two ways, you won't be entered, and you won't be like the names of the people we're getting they're giving you that are winning this trip. So take this word, which is confusing, actually confusing, and text it to 777-000, and you can enter it online at mikesroadtothecfp.com. Again, take the word that we're giving you, these two ways, and you can enter both ways. Text the word to 777-000 or enter it online at mikesroadtothecfp.com, and we really hope to be traveling with you to Tampa Bay.
College football lives here. North Carolina sits in first in the ACC Coastal and have their sights set on defending their title.
Across the 45, 50, 40, 35, dives to the cone, touchdown, 80-yard run, wow.
Up next, they head to Durham to face their fiercest rival, Duke. Coverage begins Thursday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. Presented by Dr. Pepper.
Dan Le Batard joins us now. You all know Dan, of course. His show follows us coast to coast here on ESPN Radio. He's obviously weighed down by Stugatz, but he does the best that he can every single morning, and then hosting Highly Questionable in the afternoons as well. Good morning, Dan Le Batard.
Hello. You've got it wrong, though. I'm the one that adds the weight. Stugatz carries me toward the surface of the sun. When we soar because of the secret sauce that is the mighty Stugatz.
Well, let me tell you, if that's the case, what a secret sauce that is.
No one is searching for the secret. Dan, before we get to what we originally wanted to have you on to talk about, which is Dwayne Wade returning tonight to Miami, we know you're very close to Stan Van Gundy, and Stan was one of the many and most outspoken people in the NBA yesterday, discussing the emotions that a lot of people in that league feel about the result of the election the other day and how that figures to reverberate through locker rooms and other places inside sports. I'm always curious to hear your perspective on things like that.
Well, beyond what Stan Van Gundy said yesterday, and I've been talking to him about this for a while now because this has led to some interesting locker room dynamics, as has the entire Colin Kaepernick situation. Stan is, to use his words, embarrassed and ashamed that he didn't do what he did yesterday sooner. He is really hurting about the idea that he didn't use the power of the platform to do what he did yesterday back when it could have made some kind of difference. So he didn't feel like he went far enough soon enough, and so he's really been, I know a lot of people are talking about the race element of this, but he's got daughters, and they've taught him things about what it's like to be a woman in America, and the idea that, the misogyny of the idea that somehow our presidential candidate a month before the election can have a scandal like that misogynistic, is something that really, hurt him beyond just what's happening in his locker room.
Yeah, no doubt Stan did not hold back on his thought process. On to, our world of sports and Dwayne Wade coming back to Miami. First, before we get to the crowd reaction, what of the relationship or lack thereof of he and Pat Riley, of which they have not spoken since he has been gone? Do you think that's something that will at some point be smoothed over or will just remain as it is, which is none?
Well, it's interesting because Dwayne has bent over backwards to say, while kind of slicing cuts at Pat Riley, that he understands Pat Riley, understands that he's stubborn, understands that if you're not with him, you're against him, that he'll always love Pat Riley. So it's just been interesting to watch the both of them really try and navigate some of this in spin mode since it's happened, because they're both trying to manipulate public perception on a breakup that didn't have to happen, right? If the Miami Heat wanted to keep Dwayne Wade, they would have. And if Dwayne Wade wanted to stay here, he would have. But because they both deemed that they should break up and that the relationship was over for a variety of different reasons, everything they've said since then has been spin in the public so that there isn't too much blame. I don't know that there's any good way to do what they did. So once you're going to break up, I guess this is the best way to do it.
Generally speaking, Dan, which side do the fans in South Florida agree with? Which side are they on? Are they on Dwayne's side or Riley's side?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I don't know that I can answer it because I think people are split, There's a lot of belief in Pat Riley because of everything that he did here, but the emotion of Dwayne Wade, when he looked, here's where I would go with that one because it's a difficult question. When you listen to Dwayne, and this is why the spin of this is so important, when you listen to Dwayne and he feels disrespected, that's when you lose the fans because they can't really get their head around the idea of $40 million offer that the Heat made being a sign of disrespect. But when you listen to Dwayne and he sounds hurt, that's when he hits him in the heart. When he sounds hurt, when he sounds remorseful, when he sounds like, man, I didn't want to leave there. I really didn't want to leave. That's when the conversation changes, and it's why the spin on this has been so interesting to hear both of them go at it because they're both very smart. They're both businessmen. They both understand. And so it's real difficult to answer that question. It sort of depends on what Wade is saying. They'll be on Wade's side tonight if for whatever reason during the tribute he starts crying because he was hurt by this. There's no questioning that.
Dan, Booger here. So when you say that they're going to be on his side, do you think that the fan reaction tonight is going to be overwhelmingly in favor of him, or do you think that they're still going to decide and side with Pat Riley and that he's always right as far as building that team?
Well, I think in what will reveal itself tonight, I don't think you'll hear of a bad word about Dwayne Wade tonight. I don't think there will be a bad feeling toward Dwayne Wade this evening. He will be embraced fully, and I dare say that you really have a situation here where you might, if Dwayne Wade does what he did so much for the Miami Heat, if he beats the Miami Heat on a buzzer beater, you have a very real possibility that everyone will stand and cheer that. It'll take them a moment, but, to realize what has happened after they get a little bit crushed by having lost the game. But if Dwayne Wade in that building were to beat the Miami Heat on a late shot, my guess is he will get a standing ovation for that. And my guess is you haven't seen that a lot in your lifetime.
And final thought, Dan, I guess there isn't a definitive answer to this question, but Mike and I were kicking it around a little earlier, and you've lived there all your life. Is Dwayne Wade the greatest player in South Florida professional sports history?
Yes.
He is. He's generally considered number one?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I say that. I know I answered your question a little bit too quickly, but I mean, it's either Marino or him, and by virtue of winning 3 championships and by virtue of putting together the most interesting team in the history of South Florida sports, by virtue of seeing him grow up from somebody who was getting student loans to pay for his child's diapers at Marquette to a national and an international icon who was bejeweled. Yeah, there's nobody who has had the impact and turning this from a football town, which it was during Marino, into a basketball town, which it became because of Dwayne Wade. Yeah, that's where Dwayne Wade took the mantle from Marino.
So, Dan, in sports, the years are fleeting, and not long ago, Miami had the big 3 there, and they're winning a couple of championships and going to the finals every year, to now nobody from that big 3 is on the team anymore. So 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, when somebody comes up and you say, hey, Dan, how do you remember the big 3 in Miami? What will be your answer?
The most interesting time in sports in the history of South Florida. Before that, it was those University of Miami football teams that were polarizing. Us against the world is something that gets thrown out a lot in sports. Silly, but that was something. Miami, the reason that was the most interesting team in the history of South Florida sports, beyond the glamour and the glitz of it, is because of how it felt. It felt like everyone disliked that team, and it felt like ultimately that team won people over. However it is that happened. So yeah, that was there will never. I don't know if there'll ever be a time like that again in South Florida sports, which is one of the reasons that it hurts so much to watch that Heat team now when you've got Tyler Johnson and Hassan Whiteside.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Trent Dilfer appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, and I want to give Trent credit. Trent, it might have been the last time that we spoke with you. Perhaps he's been on once since. But you were the one who said to us right before the season began about Dak Prescott that you did not believe Tony Romo would ever get that job back in Dallas. And I know a lot of people gave you a little heat for saying it, and right now you look like the smartest guy in the room.
Well, I feel like the dumbest guy in the room a lot of times, too, so it's glad to get one right every once in a while.
Well, they're probably both accurate. One way or the other. So this is the question that I had when I saw the note that Romo has now been fully cleared. So it has become exclusively a coach's decision. Here comes the question to both of you football players. Trent, I'll start it with you. If you're Jason Garrett, what do you have to see to make you make the switch back? Meaning, does Dak Prescott get one bad game? Does he get two bad games? Rookies sometimes hit walls. It is Tony Romo you have sitting there healthy, ready to go. So I get that you're going to stick with Prescott now, but just how far are you willing to go if things start to turn in the other direction?
This is a hard one. For me, it'd be more than two stinkers. I think you would have to see Dak have more than two games where he was the reason they lost. Or he played just so poorly that you were having to overcome him to somehow win close games. I think everybody's going to have one. So that's inevitable. He's going to have a bad game. I didn't think he played very well against Philly until the end of the game, and obviously overtime. So he's going to have another stinker somewhere along the line. If he has two, you just got to make sure it's not habitual, and you got to make sure it's not because it's something in his work ethic, his preparation. But then if he really hits a rookie wall and you're jeopardizing a fantastic season, well then, yeah, I think there's an argument that you have a great quarterback sitting behind him that you bring him in.
For me, I don't know if there's some exact line. There certainly isn't that you could point to. It has to be a feel thing, but a lot would have to do with turnovers. If he started turning the ball over, there's playing poorly, but the rest of your team offense can help pick you up, and there's turning the ball over and putting your team in a bad position. If he were to go through a spate of that for a couple of games, I might have a thought process about it. But for the most part, I'm with Trent. You got to give him time because he is, at the end of the day, he is a rookie and he is going to make some mistakes.
I get that, but my point is, you have Tony Romo, who isn't a rookie. You have a Super Bowl season.
As I said, it's a feel. I really think it's a feel, and I think turnovers would be a big part of it.
Trent, the other quarterback rookie situation that is gaining increasing amounts of attention is the one with Jared Goff, where he continues not to play in Los Angeles. They're not a very good team. Their starting quarterback, Case Keenum, is not playing very well. They gave up a lot to get the number one pick in the draft, and they're still not willing to put Jared Goff on the field. You know him well. You've known him an awful long time. Some people suggest this throws up a lot of red flags. What do you think?
Well, I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and I asked for permission. Could I share a little bit what we talked about when I was asked a question? He said, sure, because he's not politicking the play, but he is very, very confident in how much he's grown. He's very comfortable now with the offense. He feels like now he can do all the little things necessary to execute the offense. He sounded great, but, again, he's trying to be a pro, too. I think the other thing that Jared's learning is how to just be a professional and how to learn from Case Keenum and how to respect his coaches, how to go to work every day diligently and put in the preparation even when there's no payoff for it on Sundays. I think it's time. But again, you said it. I'm probably biased, too, when it comes to this situation. I thought it was time last week. I want to see him play. I've never been a believer you throw him out there day one. But I do think now, after they sit for a while, if they integrate into the system, the team, the culture of the locker room, that by mid-season, if the starter's not playing well, you should play the rookie. And now he should get a chance to get out there and lead this offense and get to know those guys in a game day environment and kind of get some of the hard stuff out of the way this year so that he can hit next year running.
How about a guy who started out hot, actually, affecting the game on the field, and that's Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. First 3 games, 3-0, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They lost 4 or 5 since. 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a completion percentage down. We praised him, and we praised Doug Peterson early for not only his play, but how he was being coached and the position they were putting him in. What, in your mind, either with Carson or the team, has changed?
Well, I think they did deserve to be praised because they're exceeding expectations. I think Carson showed enough. Now everybody's kind of said, yeah, this kid's going to be something else. But you're also going to struggle at times. And they're not as good as they were or, as they appeared to be early. Teams have started, as we say all the time, start writing a book on the quarterback. A lot of inside pressures are bothering him a little bit. But the biggest thing is that he's missing high. There's still open receivers. Doug's still calling a good game for him. He is now become a problem with Carson Wentz missing high. Most of his interceptions are overthrows to receivers. He's had some plays down the field, some touchdown passes that would have been there, but he misses high. In fact, we're going to geek out on Sunday countdown. I'm actually show why he's missing high from a mechanical standpoint. But it's something that needs to be addressed, and it's something he needs to fix. Otherwise, he's going to have a roller coaster career because his good is really, really good. The problem is that the bad has become pretty awful.
Mike and Trent Dilfer, and I'm glad you mentioned mechanics and fundamentals because that brings me perfectly to my next question. I always enjoy hearing you and Ron Jaworski and others talk about the fundamentals of quarterback play, of footwork, and all of that. And then I watch Derek Carr, who is currently my favorite player to watch in the entire National Football League, and he doesn't do any of it right. From what and even I can tell, without being as little of an expert on this as I am, even I can tell he's throwing off his back foot and he's moving in the wrong direction. The arm angle is coming from different places all the time, and yet the ball always gets where he wants it to get. What are your thoughts on what Carr is doing and his ability to do it for sort of an unconventional way?
Well, I think, for one, I think the feet are a little overrated when it comes to stepping into throws and not throwing off your back feet. I told you guys, I started back and did this study since 1983 of Hall of Fame or Super Bowl winning quarterbacks and found some consistencies in them. The feet were something that there wasn't one way of doing it. I'll say that. Where there was one way of doing it was from the waist up. Most every great passer our league has seen is pretty similar in their upper body mechanics. Some a little longer, some a little shorter, but the ball gets basically in the same positions. And Derek meets all those. He's so pure. We call it your stroke. His stroke is so pure. And that's why he's able to throw from some of the funky foot platforms. NFL quarterbacks have their platform right about half the time. Because of pass rush. So you have to be able to make all those throws with your feet in weird positions, your platform messed up. I don't mean to get too geeky, but I do think it's important for the fans to know that it's much more important what you do from the waist up, from the waist down, when it comes to actually releasing the ball. And that's what the great guys have figured out. They've trained themselves to play with their feet in crazy positions so the defense could never say, hey, if we take away his feet, he can't play. Well, now what Derek's been able to do, Brett Favre's done it, Aaron Rodgers done it, Brady's, I go on and on and on, is okay, go ahead, take away my feet. I can still get the ball to most places around the field accurately if I can control my upper body.
Just how good is that kid going to be, Trent?
I think phenomenal. Does that make you guys go to sleep right there with that nerdy football quarterback talk?
What'd you say that again?
I didn't get that.
I'm sorry. I thought I might have made you guys fall asleep with all that nerd quarterback talk.
Oh, no, not at all. That's what I'm saying. So that's my question is, I watch him play, and again, I'm deferring to you because you do this better than anybody. I watch him play, and I say, that guy's on his way to being the best quarterback in football. Am I overstating that?
No, I think he's like Aaron Rodgers was the first, like maybe the second year he took over, where you could see it. You could see there's something different. There's something special. There's something that you really can't put our finger on about this kid. And Aaron's ascended to that, in that conversation. I think Derek's going to be in that conversation. But as long as Tom Brady's in this league and Aaron Rodgers is in this league, and Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, that's a steep hill to climb. But yeah, if he can do this, which I think he can for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, then I think we're going to be having that discussion of him being the best player in all football.
Trent, you deal with these high school quarterbacks in the Elite 11, guys that go on and play in college and in the NFL, and we talk a lot about the difference not only of college and then transferring that to the NFL, where you get them when they're in high school. So when you get these guys, and the Elite 11 is for a reason, these are the elite high school quarterbacks, when you get them, what's the biggest negative that they consistently have when you first get them, and what's your biggest message you give them and have them work on going forward?
The biggest would be most of them spent their entire careers throwing the ball to number one, the primary receiver. I would call it pick and stick, chuck and duck, whatever, either or. I mean, there's a bunch of terms for it, but the game's become so much about chalk, coaches out chalking one another at the lower levels that, if they have good coaches, and most of them usually do when they're juniors, seniors in high school, that number one's going to be open. And when number one isn't open, then a series of bad events starts happening to their the way they play the game. So the biggest thing we try to teach them, the number one thing, outside all the intangible stuff, which is most important to us, but from a game application standpoint, is tying your feet to your eyes. Literally what I tell them, think of a string that goes from your eyelids down to your shoelaces. And every time your eyes move, your feet move. When your feet move left, your eyes move left. When your eyes move right, your feet move right. And when you start getting them to understand that in terms of progressions, now they're a little more comfortable after one's not open, trying to get to two, falling off to three. And I think that's why the guys that buy into it, they go to college and they're so accelerated in their learning that they're able to play earlier than most young guys, and then many of them go on to have incredible college and pro careers.
The North Carolina Tar Heels head to Durham to face their fiercest rivals, the Duke Blue Devils. Touchdown! Coverage begins Thursday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. Presented by Dr. Pepper.